Minutes. That's all that remained before a direct war with Iran. Airspace calculations were complete. Strike packages were modeled. Oil markets were already bracing for shock. And then, everything stopped. Not because of diplomacy, not because of international law, but because the global balance of power shifted in real time. What unfolded in Iran at the end of 2024 was not a spontaneous uprising, not a viral protest movement, and not an internal collapse waiting to happen. It was one of the most sophisticated destabilization campaigns of the digital age, and its failure exposed something far bigger. This was not just an intelligence operation gone wrong. It was a stress test of the Western-led world order, and the system failed. Stay with me to the end, because what this operation revealed marks the beginning of a new international era, one that will define geopolitics for decades to come. The operation no one saw coming. The images that dominated headlines, street protests, currency collapse, online outrage, cannot be understood in isolation. According to intelligence sources, everything began on December 28th with a coordinated economic assault on Iran's currency. This was not market volatility. This was finance weaponized. Western intelligence agencies, operating through Israeli coordination, quietly accumulated Iranian rials in advance. Then came the sell-off, massive, synchronized, and designed to trigger panic. Iran's economy, resilient in energy production, remains vulnerable in one critical area: shallow financial markets. That vulnerability was the entry point. The currency shock was the spark. But the fire was meant to spread through something far more complex. Hybrid warfare. In the digital age parallel to the economic attack, multiple ethnic proxy groups were activated. Kurdish factions along Iran's northern borders, Baluchi separatists in the southeast, members of the Mujahideen-e-Khalq, an organization once officially designated as terrorist by the United States until it was quietly removed from the list when it became strategically useful. These groups were not just funded, they were networked. Satellite communication terminals, Starlink, allowed direct coordination with external handlers, bypassing state-controlled infrastructure. This was not old-style covert action. It was hybrid warfare, creating insurgent networks capable of operating independently of national communication systems. But here's what most analysts missed. The real variable was not technology. It was state capacity. Why the operation collapsed Iran's security services, supported by Russian electronic warfare systems and Chinese technical assistance, systematically disabled Starlink networks. Once communications collapsed, street mobilization followed. This wasn't merely counterintelligence, it was a demonstration. For the first time, authoritarian states showed they could neutralize one of the West's greatest advantages: digital connectivity. The technological asymmetry that once guaranteed success no longer did. And this failure exposed something deeper: an institutional shift. The end of strategic isolation. For decades, Iran pursued strategic autonomy, accepting isolation as the price of independence. That era is over. Unlike Syria, which delayed accepting Russian assistance until collapse was unavoidable, Iran moved decisively. After the June escalation, Tehran integrated more deeply with Moscow and Beijing. This was not ideological alignment. It was institutional survival. The Russia-China-Iran axis is built not on shared values, but on shared threat perception and complementary capabilities. Geography, economics, and military realities bind them together, and geography matters. The Strait of Hormuz. Problem: Iran sits astride the Strait of Hormuz, through which nearly 45% of the world's oil transit flows. This is leverage Western military planners cannot easily neutralize. Arab Gulf states, traditionally aligned with Washington, refused overflight permissions for potential strikes on Iran. This was not ideology, it was economics. Saudi Arabia understands the stakes. Producing over 10 million barrels per day, nearly identical to Russia, Riyadh knows that closing Hormuz would trigger price shocks beneficial in the short term but catastrophic long term. This is why the region recalibrated. The legitimacy paradox. Western discourse frames Iran as an existential terrorist threat. Yet intelligence assessments show that since 1979, Iranian actions have caused fewer than 2,000 American deaths, mostly military personnel in conflict zones. By contrast, U.S. support for Iraq's chemical weapons program during the 1980s contributed to over 500,000 Iranian deaths. This asymmetry shapes perception. Neither side's narrative is fully accurate, but both drive institutional behavior that makes compromise nearly impossible. Military realities have changed. The American military is designed for global power projection, but recent conflicts reveal its limitations in prolonged regional wars. The Red Sea campaign against the Houthis, despite overwhelming technological superiority, ended in tactical withdrawal after equipment losses. Regime change in Venezuela required months of preparation and internal cooperation, not decisive force. These are not isolated failures. They point to institutional constraints. Meanwhile, Russia expanded its ground forces from 300,000 to over 1.5 million, with projections exceeding 2 million by 2026. This is institutional adaptation for prolonged conflict. Ukraine demonstrates the cost of miscalculation. After 3 years of Western weapons, deliveries, ATACMS, artillery, F-16s, the battlefield dynamics remain unchanged. This is not a tactical failure. It is institutional blindness, born of decades of fighting weaker adversaries. NATO's fracture Europe stands divided. Eastern members prioritize deterring Russia. Western Europe prioritizes economic stability and energy security. The Greenland distraction under Trump-era politics only deepened the fragmentation. Western power projection relies on alliance cohesion. When opponents develop alternative cooperation frameworks, counter-technologies, and energy leverage, that foundation erodes. This is what the Iran operation revealed in practice. The spinning plates dilemma. U.S. national debt has doubled. From $19 trillion to $38 trillion, fiscal constraints now limit sustained global engagement. Iran, Ukraine, Venezuela, domestic unrest. Each crisis demands attention. Together, they exceed capacity. Intelligence analysts call this the spinning plates dilemma. Managing all crises simultaneously means managing none effectively. The failure of hybrid warfare works against isolated targets. It fails when adversaries coordinate defenses through alternative alliances, Starlink terminals, cyber tools, surveillance systems. These advantages evaporate when countermeasures are shared. This is the lesson Iran taught the world. The nuclear threshold. Iran is now a threshold nuclear state. It has the technology, materials, and delivery systems. Only political restraint prevents weaponization. History is instructive. States that abandoned nuclear ambitions, Libya, Ukraine, paid the price. Tehran understands this. Western pressure does not prevent proliferation. It accelerates it. When Iran crosses that threshold, Middle Eastern security architecture collapses. Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Turkey, all will respond. The Eurasian backbone. Iran is not acting alone. The North-South transport corridor linking India, Iran, Russia, and Europe bypasses Western-controlled sea lanes entirely. By 2030, this corridor could transform Iran into a central transit hub, rendering sanctions irrelevant. At the same time, Iran shifts away from the dollar, settling trade in national currencies and using swift alternatives. Dollar-based punishment loses effectiveness. When sanctions fail, only force remains, and force in the Gulf today is catastrophic. Why nationalism matters. Western planners often bet on internal collapse. They underestimate nationalism. Even Iranians critical of clerical rule rally when they perceive foreign-backed destabilization. This rally around the flag effect is predicted by realism and confirmed repeatedly. The Iranian security apparatus, hardened by decades of pressure, proved resilient. Currency collapse alone does not break a state. The bigger picture, overstretched, the United States attempted to contain Russia, China, and Iran simultaneously. History shows even the strongest powers cannot do this when rivals coordinate. Russia now produces more artillery and armored vehicles than the collective West. U.S. weapons transfers to Ukraine signal finite stockpiles to Beijing and Tehran alike. Deterrence fails when material dominance erodes. World of blocks, not rules. Traditional U.S. allies now hedge Turkey, Saudi Arabia, even Europe. Saudi Arabia joining BRICS and restoring relations with Iran under Chinese mediation marked the end of oil for security, the post-1945 bargain. The era of obedient clients is over. The digital fortress. The myth that the internet inevitably undermines authoritarianism has collapsed. Sovereign, internets, electronic warfare, and cyber controls now form digital fortresses. Russia, China, and Iran exchange counter-network expertise, building a Eurasian digital shield. Information is no longer inherently liberating. It is contested terrain. The collapse of prestige. Prestige is power without force, and it is draining. When allies see failed operations and unfulfilled guarantees, they seek alternatives. Arab monarchies refusing to back anti-Iran initiatives signal Washington's prestige is at a historic low. Russia, by contrast, now mediates between Iran, Israel, and Saudi Arabia, achieving diplomatically what Washington cannot. The final verdict. The Iran operation was not a tactical intelligence failure. It was a systemic one. It marked the end of the unipolar moment. The liberal international order was not permanent. It was an anomaly born of temporary dominance. That dominance has faded. We are entering an era of hard competition, fragmented systems, parallel technologies, parallel financial networks, and parallel security architectures. Two internets, two navigation systems, two financial worlds. Efficiency declines, resilience increases, and conflict becomes more dangerous. Closing geopolitics does not reward good intentions. It rewards power, capacity, and will. The failure to destabilize Iran revealed three facts: the rise of the Eurasian axis, the limits of Western power, and the exhaustion of the old order. This is not a call for surrender. It is a call for realism. Because in a world of great powers, prudence is the highest virtue, and today it is in dangerously short supply. The world has changed. The only question left is who adapts before it's too late.